Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. It's mid-August. Summer's almost over, amazingly enough. Kids are going to resume their education, not just in this country, but around the world. In Ireland, as kids began to return to school recently, authorities there faced a choice. Now, the most obvious course would be to blindly accept guidance from self-described public health experts in the United States. That's what many countries have done as they've sought to come up with a COVID policy. And following the United States would mean, among other things, forcing children as young as 2 to wear moist paper burqas for 8 hours a day in the classroom. The other option would be to follow the science, and the Irish chose that course. The Irish commissioned their own research on masks, and here's what they found. According to the Irish Health Authority, masking children in the classroom is not a legitimate medical precaution. It's child abuse. Masks can, quote, exacerbate anxiety and breathing difficulties. They impair, quote, the development of human communication and language skills, particularly for very young children. Now, we know from previous research the masks can also contribute to high levels of carbon dioxide in the human body, and that's especially true in children. Masks often become breeding grounds for dangerous bacteria. That's conclusive in the studies. It's possible that masks even affect facial development. In other words, there are very serious downsides to forcing masks on children. The question is, what's the benefit of doing it? The Irish government looked into it and decided there is no benefit. Kids in Ireland are not getting sick from COVID. They are not transmitting COVID either. So in the end, based on the scientific research using the disappearing art of rational decision-making, the Irish government refused to implement mask mandates in school. It's an interesting story. Have you heard that story? Maybe not. Maybe telling you what's happening in Ireland could raise uncomfortable questions here, such as, why are we doing the opposite in the United States? Why are we forcing masks on children? What data are we using to justify that decision? Well, it turns out we don't have any data to justify it. As of today, there has not been a single comprehensive study in the United States showing that children should wear masks in school, or that masks would help them or anyone else in any way. What do we have then? Well, the closest thing we have to research is an op-ed that just ran in the renowned medical journal known as the New York Times, which you can buy from homeless people in Penn Station if you want to take a look. That article was written by 2 people from Duke University in North Carolina. Here's the headline. You may have seen it. We studied 1 million students. Universal masking works. That sounds definitive. 1 million students? That's a major study. We're impressed. But there was one skeptical man out there, a journalist called David Zweig, who wanted to know a little bit more about it. So he decided to look into the numbers. And as he did, the first thing he noticed was that every single one of the 1 million students Duke's researchers had, quote, studied, went to schools that already had mask mandates. Those were the only kids they studied. In other words, there was no control group. Therefore, by definition, there was no way for the researchers to determine whether or not mask mandates work. That's the most basic scientific rule. If you tried something like that with your 6th grade science project, the teacher would laugh at you and you'd get an F. But they did it anyway, because they're at Duke. So David Zweig, with this in mind, reached out to the so-called researchers. Initially, they agreed to talk to him. Why wouldn't they? Then he asked them to explain why they had ignored schools that don't have mask mandates, schools in big places like Florida or Ireland or many other countries in Europe. These schools, it turns out, have not seen a surge in COVID cases. You'd think that'd be worth knowing. How is that not relevant data if you're studying mask mandates? Why in the world was it not included in this study? What kind of study was this? Guess how the researchers responded? They didn't. They just ignored David Zweig. Is that science? No. But these are the people who now control your children's lives. Fake experts, fraudulent scientists, partisans in lab coats, people seeking terrifying levels of control over what was until recently a free country, people who are drunk with power, people who've lost all sense of proportion and restraint.